Yes, you are ready to go there.
All right. Thank you all for being here, and for a few of you who came just to see me. I know a couple of the people are here from me. I see you. So I would say that for me, the thing that I'm enamored of most is lyricism, and which is why I love Antoinette Payne's poetry so much, for example. But and kind of the rhythm and the flow of the poetry is kind of what pulls me along, and then the meaning of the poems get discovered in the journey. Another thing, a couple of weeks ago, I think I said at Nomadic that I just started writing poetry 3 years ago, and it's not absolutely true. I used to jot things down, and I also had a few poems that I wrote in my head that I never wrote down, but that kind of were gnawing at me, and they still are there. Like when I'm in the car alone, I recite these things, and I think they're more like kind of raps, and I'm embarrassed somehow, because I'm a secret rapper, from decades past, and I always write trying to impress, the underground '90s hip hop artists that I'm a fan of, in my mind's eye. So anyway, with that, I'll try not to be too embarrassing. The first one, and everything's memorized because that's how it's supposed to be for this kind of stuff. And when it comes to rapping, you got to memorize your shit. The first one is called Zephyrat, which is in the Kabbalistic Kabbalistic Judaism. The Sephirat are the kind of the broken vessels of creation that it is our job as humans to go and like find and repair. So anyway, here we go. Sephirat, and it's kind of like an invocation or an invitation, and it goes like this. When the rhythm is right, like a prism of light, I come straight from the source with no more shame or remorse. I burst forth full force like the flame of a torch in the night when I ignite. I'm bending bars with my voice, so free your mind and rejoice. I'm bending bars with my voice, so free your mind and rejoice. Cause like a prisoner might just have a vision of flight, the songbird sings to grow the songbird sings to grow wings, shakes off the shackles of things, takes to the air, released from all cares, hopes and dreams. The nervousness will wear off in a minute, I'm sure. Bear with me. Free flowing through the bloodstreams that the breath of life brings. We're bending bars with our voices, freeing our minds and rejoicing. We're bending bars with our voices, freeing our minds and rejoicing. And though you may be dismayed or disgruntled when I show you the way to the light at the end of the tunnel, I hope you know I mean no malice when I get you open like Alice. So please don't trip if you cut your lip when you take a sip, because this chalice is broken. Take a sip from my broken cup and open up. So I invite you to, take a sip anyway. The next one is something that is called moonshine, but it's not really about alcohol. It's about when the moon is up in the daytime, which was something that I would kind of arbitrarily decide that I was having a good day when I was a teenager because the moon was up. And it is kind of a love poem. And this is like from my late 20s, like a 1997, 98. So here it goes. And imagine some really cool jazz music in the background. Hey, moonshine, it's always playtime when you're up in the daytime. And I'd like to say I'm just having a good time, but the love that I feel is just so goddamn real that it shocks me like blazing sunshine in the dead of winter. And when I'm next to you, I feel so fresh and new, like the smell of the earth when the rain stops, an absolute beginner. And the sweet sadness in me is so glad to see your face opening up to me. You touch the well of my hurt and then the pain stops. But I gotta fess up, you're looking hot in your skirt. My urge to flirt swells in me, compelling me to pull your dress up. And the connection between our two midsections is so direct that just the smell of your sweat makes my whole soul erect. And the inevitable thrust of my incredible lust stabs you in the abdomen like you were St. Catherine and I was the angel of God holding a javelin. And then the beast is released. I tear your tights with my teeth to discover beneath no more resistance and no more distance as the lines are erased between existence and non-existence and those of time and of space. Our disappearance was magnificent, innocent. But when the morning sun's face raises his head to find us lying in bed and crying instead of laughing and babbling at the sign of the threads of life's unraveling, he's got you leaving again and I'm not breathing again. So I am traveling in through the landscapes of my inner space where the sinner's face and the cynical, clinical grace of a fallen angel. And this next one is kind of like, you know, the character is that fallen angel. You know, it's you know, because creation is destruction and the root of all evil is conscious awareness and creativity, you know, and it's called Yesh Me'ayin in Hebrew, which is a Kabbalistic thing that means something, you know, something from nothing, you know, and that the first kind of how evil was introduced into the universe was through the act of creation, the stepping back from oneself in order to look at something and make it something, right? So this act of creation is also a destructive act. And you know, that's consciousness. That's our conundrum. And I will preemptively redact all of this because this is a megalomaniacal, self-aggrandizing, inappropriate character who's about to step on the stage. Here it goes. This is something from nothing. My shit is so complex and comprehensible, like having sex with an electric fence at will. Shock you to the core, from your head to the floor, leave you deader than a door. Nail like I was the holy grail and you thought you were in heavenly bliss, but then you wake up to find you're still just holding on to the third rail of my rhyme, flashing through the darkness of your mind like lightning. I am sublimely frightening, like a crime of passion, dashing all your hopes and your Catholic schoolgirl memories, like I was the Mac Daddy pimp pope of the century, like I was meant to be, like God sent me to set you free. Got you begging and pleading, whelping and needing me to put my seed in, cause you believe in my mentality will rearrange your reality, have your ontogeny, recapitulate your phylogeny, and my progeny will set the whole world free. So fuck a naysayer, the ever hater player, don't even try to say I ought to be the next mayor or the next president, cause I'm out to represent so much higher, set your soul on fire, have you screaming out, he's the soul messiah. That's why I get you open like a snake charmer, got you hoping that I penetrate your body armor, cause like a cross between Osama and Obama, Jeffrey Dahmer and the Dalai Lama, I come to bring the pain and the drama, at the same time release you from your chains, the shame of your trauma, cause I'm a universal law with a fundamental flaw, so calculatingly raw, and it really don't matter to me, a winner, a loss, or a draw, as long as we keep playing, I'ma keep saying shit, my shit. Anyway, so those are old poems that I memorized. I wrote them in my head and memorized them, and you know, continue to recite when I'm driving my car and nobody can hear me. And they were secrets for a very long time, but now they're no longer secrets. Thank you for that. And so now we'll move on to some more recent shit that's also, I think, lyrical and somewhat rappy, but I think maybe more kind of expansive in some ways. This one is called Glory Train Wreck, and it's secretly about my grandfather's death. Sleep apnea is something that runs in the family, and so the shuddering snore at the end of this poem is really about the weeks when he was dying, and he would stop breathing for long periods of time, and then his dying body would shake and come back and start breathing again, and that was happening for days on end as he was, you know, leaving his mortal coil. Anyway, it goes like this: Glory Train Wreck. Failure is a flirtation with forever, a glorious train wreck of possibility and repetition, a possible glory train repeatedly wrecked, glory's eye possibly trained upon wretched repeater, possible glory train wreck repeat. Fragility, apparently, more often than not, is merely the smeared mascara of manipulation compulsively applying itself. If you can successfully lie to yourself, you may be able to utter the words, I'm not a liar, without the accompanying dizzy ring in the ears that conscious disingenuity often triggers. The foreground is a choice we make in every instant, whether we are aware of our awarenesses or not. The gap between good and bad is a hoary and fibrous filament. Can the real space between yes and no still be captured when the camera eye has been digitized? It's not so much what we don't say, but how we don't say it that gives us texture and nuance. The promise of the written word alone the written word alone cannot fulfill the promise of a dancing stutter step of meaning making. There must be a voice that stops and starts in a particular way, manifest in the speaker, listener encounter, or in the mind's ear of the reader's imagination. Breath is and isn't, over and over again, birth, death, and the in-between, like the shuddering snore of sleep apnea. All right, and this next one is it's called dialectics. You know, in the Aztec sense of the Teotl, or in the Taoist sense of the Tao, or in the Hegelian sense or Marxist sense of the dialect, but also in terms of dialect and the dynamics of power between the street Creoles of the world and the powers that be, and how we, how the creative language of the people at the bottom is constantly transforming, the world. And so that's kind of what dialectics means in this context. And a lot of you have heard this poem before, but this is kind of the one that broke open the floodgates of writing about 3 years ago. And it goes like this. And I think it's appropriate for these new talking head experiences. My simulacra do not fit inside your letterboxes. My emoticons do not reflect your pixelations. My unhinged front doors skulk around the edges of your banquet hall campaign dinners. My forest floor mycelia often appear bemused by your chewing gum stained sidewalks. My earthworms thrash about in your cracked concrete rain puddles. My good hair, when oiled up and shining, sublimates your disdainful glances. My itinerant amalgamations interpolate your purposefully designed algorithms. My inner crunchy beavis feels simultaneously repulsed by and drawn to your outer creamy butthead. My market-driven cycles of therapeutic release get tripped up at every turn by your swarms of deep data-driven drone hordes, 3D nanoprinting, endless piles of neo-Freudian desires every time I risk it and step out from under the protective shield of my inner sanctum. My adverse childhood experience survival maps pair exquisitely with your trauma-triggered psychotic interludes. My heart dreams, clouded over by probable coronary artery bypass surgeries, ache for your laparoscopically removed gallbladder insights. My inner sense of nothingness, smelling of ozone and tobacco, desperately needs a hug from your indignant sense of self-righteousness, oozing red wine, rage, and heat rising in waves. I give it a good practice throw, and my kidney stone skips 19 times across to the farther shore of your steaming pool of bile. My awkward approximations of antiquated analog interfaces are not quite capable of successfully coupling with your carefully crafted drop-down menus of indefinitely recombinable mood textures, but the resultant ripples of distortion and static can be surprisingly genuine. My melancholy personifications of condemned 20th century brick tenements, harsh the swoony buzz of your anthropomorphized ant colony high-rise micro-apartment complex with incredible walk score aspirations. My rootless cosmopolitan nonchalance unnerves your hard-fought provincial sense of well-rootedness. The fanning cracks in the corners of my rose-colored sunglasses reveal infinitely recurring fractals of your harsh realities, and like a cunning linguist caught in somebody else's glass bead game, I revel in the gratuitous pleasures of submerging myself in the staccato rhythms of a crumbling empire's lingua franca, steeped in the street creoles of creative resistance at the bottoms of the turtle stacks. I talk my smack, drink my coffee black, no cream, no sugar, just put a little bit of cinnamon in it, or maybe lace me up with some of that Similac. And I think that poem contains every other utterance I've ever had in my life somehow. And I kind of set it up just to be able to say, put a little bit of cinnamon in it, because I love saying that. And because there's a turtle named Mac in the poem whose name is not mentioned. Anyway, the next one is my epic poem, my long poem. It's called Blue Luck Inverted. And I guess I'm going to finish with that. And it sort of spans 1,700 years. 6 minutes? Give me 8, and I think I can, if I go fast, I'll get it done. Here it goes. Blue luck inverted, an upside down four-leaf clover, kinda purplish, more red than dead, but still no better off for time spent in service, overgrown and sulky, stuck in a quagmire, rowing in place in a tinny little boat, nostalgic for a dream that seemed like destiny at the time, but never really manifested. True love converted like a Sephardic Jew who, in order not to get caught in the snare of a Spanish inquisitor's plot and the attendant innovations and devices of a burgeoning trade in torture, surmises it would be wiser to hold his tongue, hide his faith and pride inside, resort to artifice and bide his time, identity deflowered by a lustily papal penetration, architectonically tonifying its rapaciousness, consciousness invaders, creators of a new self, erected for the sole gratification of an expanding avarice, empire, churches gone wild, drunk on success, newly minted mental prison, interior design services, reconfiguring her every thought, impulse, and urge with interrogative precision. Queen Anne, she laced them up good when her turn came around. Kingdoms united in perpetuity, a couple of fat blood sausages and a sizable annuity. Set them up and lay them down, said the fat lady with the crown, and the Whig and Tory two-party system sales got a gust to prime the pump and stump the growing throat lump of hungry masses still wallowing in filth and swallowing this bill of goods. Lump sum trust funds accruing interest for the well-fed landed gentry and their ilk. A pint of gin, a lump of coal, and a crust of bread for the work-weary kept them bleary and consenting. A leaky lean-to with a single cot and a pot to piss in. Just enough time to get drunk, fucking pass out before it's back to heavy lifting on the docks if they had any kind of pull at all with Lady Luck, and thusly thrust into the future, feverish and blustery, a couple of conventional two-party parties, the truest, bluest pimps and panderers and their bestest bottom bitches, party like hardened arteries stoned to the kidneys, donors freshly harvested organs kept on ice for any on-the-fly transplant needs that might arise, the most heroic super savior surgeons that beck and call in the back hall with the rest of the charming hostesses and servants. Hold on one second here. Charming hostesses and servants. Put them up and knock them down, a soul cry to the peons propped up on pedestals, precariously poised in the neon night. Pull them down and drag them in by their ears to the center of the ring with all the rest, the dispossessed and disenfranchised, demoralized and depoliticized. Get them crazed, enraged, and frenzied, and let them feed a little cinnamon and molasses, a little razzmatazz for they hungry asses, a little snake oil sales charm mixed in with just the right amount of false alarm to keep them distracted from what's really going on, from the top of a soapbox or a milk crate at the corner of an empty lot on the edge of a sidewalk by a sewer grate, a little scorched earth birthright song and dance to fan the flames of hate and fear enough to put them in a trance, keep those fires burning, hungering for the flesh of a new scapegoat to sear and tear and rip to shreds, or at least keep them blind to the chains around their brains, squinting into the sun to catch a glimpse of what promises of greener pastures always over the next hill or just out of sight, past the horizon line. 15 minutes of fame simulates a satiating point of reference, sufficient significance for any fly-by-night meaning seeker to make their nest in. Gas chamber, heat clocked, eternal cinder slumbers from mind-numbing, soul-searing numbers, early in and last to leave, easy bake furnace, maintenance worker said, just doing my job as he clocked out from another graveyard shift. Somebody's got to tend these fires, work those extra hours, make that overtime pay, why not me? Genocide, the new quotidian humdrum beat with a mushroom cloud alarm clock. Front parlor pushed past the threshold, out into the street, professionalized, birth and death reallocated to hospitals and funeral homes, relegated to the edges of awareness, left to fester unattended as we learn to feel a little more anxious and disgusted by all the gory details of childbirth. Let the doctors drug us up and cut us, bottle feed our babies formula for our convenience, Similac children living in the simulacra, and death not just to fear it, but resent it with a vengeance, like we ought to be able to stave it off and live forever or some such nonsense. Duped by psychological fear desire ad campaigns, we hand over our miraculous beginnings and sacred endings, transmogrified, squeaky clean, sold back to us, packaged indispensable services we never knew we needed. Next on the agenda, the living room takeover, domesticity rebranded and repurposed, the fabulous Technicolor makeover, TV sets, TV dinners, and bright orange tang, the drink of the astronauts and teenagers, troubled youth, rebels without causes ad nauseum would never have been plausible before, sectionals, hi-fi stereos, family rooms and great rooms, Pop-Tarts, space programs, a car in every driveway, college campus doors open just a little wider, a new chance to be the first in your family with a university degree, a real opportunity to stretch out adolescence, remodel remodel and refurbish internal mental spaces, mold and craft and fabricate the perfect consumer, special, precious, important, and hollow in the center, like an individually wrapped fingerling sponge cake with a big black hole where they put the cream in, a never-ending supply of need to fill over and over and over and over and over again ad infinitum. Now that's some great motherfucking marketing. We learned to yearn for the flush of freedom we felt from an open sky rolling by in a well-paved stretch of highway, soon clouded over by smog, but we kept driving anyway to catch that rush of wind in our faces from behind the wheel of a large automobile, careening recklessly down crumbling roadways into the jammed-up gridlock of the present and wondering how we ever got here in the first place. Keep the Manichaean machinations churning, the elemental extraction contraptions, keep them pumping, bumping and scraping all the fracking crude they can to the last drop in all the metals, precious, semi-precious or not, but it doesn't really matter, does it? As long as we keep pulling this shit out of the ground, we can still get this easy money. They chortle, giddily, gleeful fist bumps and ass slaps all around, complicit in agreement with their greedy logic. Not to get while the getting is good would just be stupid. Guns, gas, gold, minerals, coal, diamonds soaked in blood, from the Fertile Crescent to Africa to the South Pacific to Alaska to the Appalachians, and with a little more snow melt to beyond the Arctic. Circle jerks with their O faces on full tilt, pushing it into the hilt, squeezing out every last iota of exploitable materia prima, going nuts, busting through the ceilings of their quota packages, a lewd concoction for a post-apocalyptic cocktail glass filled to the rim. Drug your dreams, imprison your conscience, murder your profits. Always keep a keen eye on your next quarter's profit margin, and remember to keep all those miscreants and malcontents on the margin. Promote your protean proto-homo sapiens aggressors as they brown nose and bully their way into executive suites like bulldozing bulldogs with bullhorns and a penchant for laying waste to make way for glistening new glass buildings to beat and scrape the sky with, and a certain weakness for a good con, an artful cheat, and the strong arm of a heavy-handed thief. Everybody wants to be czar or kaiser or king or whatever, but this one likes to daydream about opening up a chain link fenced in zone for golf course midway mega malls along every underexploited coastline from North Korea to Kazakhstan, so he can relaunch Orange Julius with his too much beta carotene and his skin cream fat face as the mascot, and maybe he could sponsor a local sports team or two so he can get a fanfare parade whenever he rolls through. Add fun new items to the menu like Caesar salad to pass the time and keep from losing interest, and special Twitter tweet incentive treats for return customers to drum up business, and he could dole out ridiculously puny severance packages to all the little people he get to fire, and flat screen camera eyes disguised as framed portraits of his favorite fascists would hang on all the walls for every passerby to admire. Can I get 1 minute? Twitter, tweety, tweety, twoo, an absent-minded grin, drool dribbling lazily from his chubby orange chin, just some smarmy carny with a certain Elmer Fudd-type swagger who somehow sneakily snaked his way into the big top center ring, much to the chagrin of the box seat bigwigs, bankrolling the whole shindig, pulling a fast one and pulling off his ugly fuck you pimp performance, the I am Donald J. Trump billionaire, I own a hotel chain, a couple of skyscrapers, have my own TV show, and I'm the goddamn president, and I'm gonna kill that wascally wabbit if it's the last thing I do shtick, or so they'd have you think, as he brazenly declares national debt bankruptcy to the IMF, seizing all public assets with his pudgy pussy-grabbing digits, awkwardly fidgeting and blurting random rants at White House press conferences like some overblown signifying infant orangutan. And I guess I better stop because I'm over time.
Unmute, Dan.
Thanks. Now you can hear me. Thank you. I had to unmute me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Give the guy a round of applause. That was absolutely stellar.
Woo, 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 woo.
Yeah. Yeah.